We are so back, baby! With Shaheen! Say hi, Shaheen!
Hey, everybody!
Yeah, nice. You guys get your favorite co-host again. So, tonight we're talking with Ian from Push Protocol, who is not only a project that I really like, but also gave out sick merch on Ape Global. Hi, Ian. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, GM. We're so back. It's a new bull market. Everybody's building. Happy to be here. And yeah, I'm going to tell my friend Z you said that because he designs all the merch.
Dude, this is amazing. Like, I really like the shirt. This is the kind of shirt that I can just wear on my regular daily basis, you know? And I think that's when you know you got really good swag.
Z's the man. I'm going to tell him. He'll be happy to hear that.
I see you have a guitar right behind you.
I've been playing since I was 13, so that's about 21 years now.
Dude, that's amazing. Awesome. So actually, this leads me to ask you, talk a little bit more about yourself, your journey in life, what you've been doing since you've been playing guitar and in life, in crypto, everything.
That's quite the journey. I stepped out of my bachelor's degree in good old Roanoke, Virginia, not really knowing what I was going to do, except that I liked teaching because I'd done a bit of an ESL certificate while I was in my bachelor's. So the first thing I did was go to China, ended up there for 3 months on a short teaching experience, kind of like an internship. Then shortly after that, ended up in the Czech Republic. By 2016, I'd been teaching there for over a year. And I walked into a provincial library and looked down. I was just looking for an English book, a book in English in general. There was a small section there of those books. And looking down, and my eyes just randomly fell upon Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper, which, if you know or if you don't know, is one of the most seminal works on Bitcoin and just crypto in general from way back in the day now. And that was my first inroads into all of this. I ate it all up, learning about Bitcoin, about censorship resistance and all the decentralized money and all the theory there. Read the Bitcoin white paper and that in 3 days. Jumped onto crypto Twitter all the way back in 2016 when it was just like the Bitcoin fam and the Litecoin fam and basically nobody else. And then quite shortly after, found myself in the midst of ICO season writing articles. That's where I got started further, just writing whatever I wanted to, whatever my thoughts were on the space. That grew into a regular freelance business, and that grew into me being on the ground floor of Bitpanda, the Austrian exchange. And we developed the first text-based crypto academy. Yes, before Binance and before Gemini and all the others, even though they might dispute that. But that was the beginning. There's a lot to unpack there, including who my mentors were and how I got to where I am now. There's a lot of side steps as well.
It really felt like a completely empty canvas back then, right? You could just do anything. You could just start writing random articles, and you would be part of what became today as this huge community around Web3.
Yeah, it was very much. If you think it's a blank canvas now, which it is in a lot of ways, it's still quite easy, and there's still a lot of opportunities for people to get involved today. But if you think today's like that, it was way easier and way more of a blank canvas in some ways back then, but also way harder because there were a lot of less transparent roads, a lot of less defined roles and responsibilities. Basically, everyone was a developer. So I was one of the first writers in the space, like who ended up doing it full time.
No, I totally remember my friends talking so much about crypto. Back in university, I think 10 years ago or so, and all the hype that was generated around it. And it was still so hard to use. Even if you had some technical background, you kind of felt it like being a little painful, right? So how did you come over that with your background that was more, I think, language oriented than tech oriented? How was the journey of trying to navigate these waters?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. Part of what helped me was that language background, first of all, like not just teaching English, but I'd always been learning other languages. I speak multiple languages. So actually, the logic behind learning languages helped me to understand the logic behind why blockchains matter, why a lot of this, everything around crypto matters, and how it works, at least on a macro level for starters. And then the second thing that helped me the most when I didn't understand something alone, which was, of course, frequently, I had very good mentors, and I was very lucky in that way. People who are not just developers, but physicists at the same time, writers at the same time, 5 or 6 different things teaching me the ways of crypto. One of the first ones was Jeff McCabe, who gave me my first start before Bitpanda on several of his blogs. People might know him now. He's doing a lot of innovative things in like on-chain comics and cool stuff like that. So there was Jeff. And then after then at Bitpanda, Raphael Schoen, who's now at Relay with Emo Bobbits and a lot of other OG people over there doing Bitcoin in Switzerland. And then more steps along the way, Norwegian Block Exchange. My mentor was Kat from Trezor. So way back in the day, OG Trezor, teaching me a lot of things about marketing, branding, PR, and beyond. And then I was fortunate enough before Push to work at Serotonin on the ground floor when everything blew up and got popular there. And Serotonin was working with everyone as a Web3 consultancy. So I learned a lot from Amanda Cassett and AJ and Everett and everyone over there too.
It's great having these people who you can just ask things to, right? It becomes your strength becomes your networking, your capabilities of communication, I guess, at the end of the day, in some point, some way or how, some way or shape.
Yeah. So point being, exactly, you learn a lot yourself depending on what your background is, but you can't learn everything yourself. And for me, the most helpful thing beyond learning yourself is having the right mentors next to you.
Yeah. I think for me as well, I'm very lucky because with the guys that inspired me to go into Web3 are the guys who I work with today, at least in my case. So this is very nice.
Yeah, that's actually true in my case too, in the sense that, for example, I've always been inspired by what Harsh and the team have done at Push, and then I ended up working there. So that ended up great for me.
Yeah, I think Push specifically is something that I would really like to know about more. I think giving a brief intro, how we even got to interact together in here would be nice. I think the communication between Cartesi and Push started with our team randomly checking out protocols and things that we would like to use on our projects, and we felt that Push was always a great tool. So I did some coding and integrated Push with Cartesi. Then Shaheen used it on his own project as well, Comet, and it just felt nice. I think that's the beauty of.
We're the same as you. That's why it works so well, in my opinion, too, because that's how we find partners. Where some people are more or less restrictive with who they partner with in crypto as it goes, but like Cartesi, we're very open. We're extremely interoperable. We have like 700 connections with different projects and counting. We believe we only win together. And also, as a side note, but a very important side note, of course, you can't really build a real-time notifications and messaging protocol without being connected to basically everyone, meaning it won't really scale without a really large number of connections.
True. Couldn't be more true.
Okay. I think for some users, it might be sounding a little bit gibberish. So let's step back a bit. Maybe if you can define in your own words what Push is doing. I think you already mentioned how did you enter the Push protocol, the ecosystem. But what you are doing with Push protocol, like what problem are you trying to solve here? And how does it affect or impact the whole ecosystem, the users? How does it transfer there?
Yeah, so in the most fundamental sense, Push protocol is a set of rules for enabling real-time messaging on-chain. And the problem we're trying to solve is just like in Web 2, when you wake up and you look at your phone and you have all your notifications from all your favorite apps or just the apps you care about right there on your screen. We're trying to enable that for wallet addresses and backends and beyond. And we've proven that out. and it continues to scale. So in an even simpler sense, push protocol is your go-to destination for all on-chain messaging, no matter the specific use case or the specific kind of message you're trying to send. And people often ask after that, where does the message get sent, or who is it being sent between? The most basic way to understand that is it depends on wallet addresses. So the protocol assumes that wallet addresses are the dominant form of ID, which we also believe will become more and more the new ID paradigm for everything online, the wallet address.
This is a good discussion that I would really like to engage on, because I've seen, being DevCon, I'm actually still in Bangkok from DevCon, but being there, lots of discussions were raised about wallet abstraction, account abstraction. Lots of people saying that maybe we should go a little bit back to the way Web 2 was, because everyone understood so well email. Like everyone knows what to do when there's a field saying input your email here. How do you feel we can transition to this, I guess, more of a wallet address than email, or if there's a way to have both?
First of all, we do believe there's a way to have both, and we do believe we'll have, as sort of a next step, more of a transition period, like you kind of just suggested. Like we'll go from where we are today to a period where both wallet addresses and email are the dominant paradigm, and then wallet address is the dominant paradigm, the sole dominant paradigm. But as to how we get there, one thing we know and believe and are working on that needs to happen is far more cross-chain bridging and messaging through working and being interoperable with protocols like Wormhole. We have a proposal up on our forum, and we're doing the work to make sure we have Wormhole-based cross-chain requests run through their NTT framework and their relayers. So that's an important step there. Being as interoperable as possible, because the greater goal is for single sign-in via wallet, for example, to really happen at scale. We need apps to not be even cross-chain. We need them to be universal. We need to get to the point where the user doesn't even have to care what chain they're on or at that particular moment. The application just runs on many different chains at once and does the bridging on the back end.
Yeah. I think shout out to every guy who's trying to solve the composability issues.
To be clear, exactly. But to be clear, no, we don't believe like, oh, that's all going to happen in like 1 year. We're realistic, and we know it's going to take a lot of steps together, and we're only going to, so to speak, as I said before, win together. We're going to get there faster. The more we work together, the more projects that work together on this issue.
I see.
So I think it would make a little bit more sense, or it would be clearer, like if you could explain with an example from an end user perspective, what do I have to do to receive these push notifications?
Yeah, of course. So going back, one of the best examples of just how to get started with push is how to start a push channel. And when I say push channel, I just mean, in the most basic sense, 2 wallets or more wallets talking to each other with real-time messages on a blockchain. So how do you start a push channel? You go to our website, you click start channel. Essentially, it takes less than 5 minutes. It just involves inputting the wallet addresses you want involved, and then paying a very small fee in the push token, a one-time fee, an instantiation or an initiation fee. And you don't pay a fee after that. The channel just runs through the app, through the push app on push.org. But I'd like to add to that, because it's true. We also, of course, as Cartesi knows, do plenty of customizable instances, and that by no means do our push notifications only run through the push app. We can customize it or white label it to your dApp, to a part of your dApp, to all kinds of things.
Yeah, I mean, I have first-hand experience, like integrating push with the app that I was building, and yeah, I can attest to that. It just takes like 5 to 10 minutes, just creating your own channel and just integrating it with your application.
So we're working on getting it even shorter, but yeah, that's how simple it is. It's inputting wallet addresses, clicking a few buttons, and saying start channel, essentially. And then you go in there, and what it looks like, because people ask that, well, what does it look like? Is it super crypto? Is it really hard to like understand where the messages are and all that? It just looks like a WhatsApp type thing. It's really simple interface like that. It reminds you of WhatsApp. And the main difference is the user IDs or wallet addresses. And another difference that's cool and important, people ask about spam for push channels. Everything is opt-in, so you can't just receive spam you don't want. You have to opt into all the requests. For example, if people want to join your channel and send you something, you have to let them. The administrator, the initiator of the channel has to let them join, and they can't see anything until they join. It's encrypted until they join.
Oh yeah, that was something pretty cool. Like I found like this freedom of opting in and opting out. That was something pretty cool. So it sounds like a very easy process, very simple process. Like right now, I think the ecosystem that you started was just Ethereum chain, like in the
Right.
initial days.
It began that way. Yeah.
Right. And I think initially it was named like Ethereum push notification service, like catering to the whole ecosystem. So where does it go? Like, do you see any potential challenges when we start talking about different chains, different networks, like this whole interoperability thing of notifications? Do you see challenges there? How does the roadmap unravel itself like in future?
Yeah. So first of all, we're definitely going way beyond EVM to non-EVM and already working on several instances of that. But as to challenges, yeah, of course, there are challenges with anything non-EVM because of where we began, because, of course, the logic in the most basic sense is mostly based on solidity. So that's a challenge. But we already have, for example, we've gone from Ethereum to Polygon to Arbitrum to Cyber and many other L2s like that are, of course, still EVM based. As far as the non-EVM logic, one thing that's helping us cross that plateau is something I mentioned, working with partners like Wormhole to have quicker, more efficient bridging solutions for our logic and everything related to that. So once the Wormhole cross-chain request framework is fully implemented, a lot of that will be easier. But I can mention another thing to the community. One thing we're working hard on just doing ourselves mostly so far is our roadmap currently targets Solana to be available, Solana dApps and Solana everything to be available with push by February or before. So that would be a key example of a non-EVM chain that's upcoming, Solana.
Think of these partnerships with other protocols. Sometimes it's scary because you have to do so much. You have to implement code so much to be able to reach the point where the thing is seamless and actually working as it was in the previous version. How do you face it?
So yeah, number one, it does take a lot of work, but I'm thankful to our team. We have like the most dedicated integrations team I've ever seen. If you think about how Dan Romero onboarded people to Farcaster in the early days where he did like 1,000 users or something himself in his DMs. That's kind of like analogous to what we're doing now with how we onboard chains and dApps and everything. We're still like, as you know, because we have a shared channel with you guys, we just plug in our integration team to every potential partner channel. And there's always like a dedicated integration engineer and someone like me involved with the relationship directly the whole time until it happens. For example, until if you're a DEX from 0 to the point where your customizable margin call notifications are implemented.
I mean, I think you mentioned 1,000 users right now. Like, this is huge success on onboarding. What do you think other protocols could learn?
We have essentially
like
700 integrations. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you think every one of these protocols can collaborate to help with onboarding? I think personally, onboarding is a huge challenge right now on Web3. So I would love to understand how to get there.
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that plays out. First of all, with regards to how Push and our partners collaborate to onboard people in new and not so new ways, even just fundamental, important ways. We are exploring more ways to do co-grants, not just co-marketing, like a lot of people say, where it's like a small marketing campaign to onboard people, but co-grants, getting developers to build applications that work, of course, because we're so interoperable, that integrate some aspect of Push and then integrate some aspect of the partner or the two partners or more partners all in one application. Ideas like that to onboard people. Through our grants program, another key example I like is what we're planning for next year to double down on onboarding, to directly support through our grants program, connecting partners even more to each other, not just to us, but as they're building, they're having like cohorts where they mentor each other and help each other find new ways to scale and new events to get involved in. AKA, this also applies to other areas of onboarding. I think we more and more need to get not just people together in the sense that they're integrating with push and they're enabling messaging via push, but all the people messaging on the protocol are getting together and seeing what they can build together, even if we're not directly involved. We're a cohesive ecosystem. We need more dApps to be built. We need more instances. There's far more that's useful when you think about real-time messaging on a on-chain protocol than just messaging. That there's a lot of other instances that and ways that can play out as to concrete use cases with dApps. So just to mention another quick one, when I think about onboarding, this is a buzzword, but it's important. If you drill down and go beyond the buzzword, we need to do a whole lot more co-education. That doesn't just mean surface level talks that don't have very clear KPIs. It means co-hackathons with very clear themes and goals. It means ideas like we're coming up with for next year with our partners, like potentially a college DAO with many colleges from all over the world, starting ambassador hubs with us and our partners and funneling inward into this co-ecosystem we have, not just Push, but the 700 other partners involved. We need to think not just bigger, but more goal-oriented beyond, for example, Push started by mainly being oriented around getting people to integrate with Push and getting people to message with Push. Now we're thinking bigger. We're thinking what's beyond there, what constitutes a Push app beyond messaging. What can you prove out as a developer, like I kind of suggested, when you know that Push is mainly meant for real-time messaging? What other apps, what other games, what other things can you build with that and partners connected together? So if that all makes sense, the key areas I look at when I think about even just Web3 onboarding in general are more co-education, more working together on grants programs, and even newer ideas for using things that make crypto great, like the DAO framework, to drive further onboarding, such as this thing I said about a college DAO having 20 or more colleges from around the world funneling into a very large ecosystem and people learning through internships. And then, one-to-one, they tell someone else, but there's so many people involved that exponentially increases the onboarding.
One thing, I mean, completely agree with co-education. I think everything you said makes a lot of sense. One thing I want to pick your brain on a little bit is I have many friends who are devs, marketing, BD, and other protocols. And sometimes there's a sensation, there's a feeling from these other protocols that some kind of frustration, even that they feel that all the development and all the adoption is directed through money. There has to be money incentives in the form of hackathons, grants. How do you see that? I want to understand a little bit of your point of view.
So you're also saying that, because I'm well acquainted, the debate sort of between using, for example, airdrops and money mechanisms for onboarding, or using something else for onboarding, so to speak.
Even grants, right? Because you were also in the grants team there in Push. And
yeah, so that's a great question. I'll use a quick example first of all, because it's a good one. From the standpoint of grants, from what I do, being the head of grants at Push, there's a interesting balance, kind of also like what you mentioned with hackathons and things like that, with grants as well. When you talk about how monetarily motivated a grantee is versus how long-term oriented they are, meaning are they really passionate about building something out over the long term and scaling it, for example, on Push protocol, or do they just want to be there for 3 months or something like that and just make a quick Push channel and scale it a bit, and then they're going to disappear? Both things have happened to us and many others. It's just kind of natural in the grants program. But the way I see it is we need to work, and we have been doing that throughout the year when, for example, an ecosystem grants program is active, to strike that delicate balance. You have to actively work with each grantee to both satisfy what they need from a monetary perspective to keep, for example, the dApp scaling. Of course, you need money to keep developing, to keep growing, to keep getting users, to keep doing everything, but work to have KPIs and co-goals together, have conversations about that in place, so that you know the whole time throughout the whole process of the dApp or the project being in your ecosystem, being in your grants program, that they're striking towards a long-term goal. They have a clear path that goes beyond the money, that goes towards a greater ultimate vision of, for example, being the first social media platform to natively use push or something like that. In other words, the biggest thing I see that some people aren't seeing yet is just how intensive you have to be to make sure you strike that balance, just how person to person you have to be, just how active you have to be with your grantees, for example, or just your hackathon participants. You have to constantly be in conversation to make sure you stay aligned with a long-term goal. I think it's natural, but some people don't realize it. Like, to get beyond just the money, to get beyond the short-term focus like that, you have to be in regular conversation with the dApp team or whoever else is involved, and help them understand what your goals are as an ecosystem and where they fit in. In an even simpler sense, what I'm saying is you have to show your grantees that you really do care, or else they're not going to care beyond the money.
Going back to the developers, going back to the communities, right? You plant a seed, but you have to water it as well.
Yes, exactly. That's an even better way of saying it. You have to water it. And plenty of people are great at planting the seed and getting people started and getting like the first instantiation finished, like a push channel, for example. But what's beyond the push channel? What will the app grow into? How will it continue to participate in the ecosystem? What I'm seeing across all grants programs and all hackathons and related things, the hardest part is after the initial thing is the success happens, the first prize is won, the first channel is created, retention. That's the hardest part.
I mean, this is so relatable, and we resonate it with like so much. Like we have all these initiatives, all these money incentives, and what happens after that? Like we have been in closely touch with all these groups. I very much like this idea of these college communities, like and I also kind of had this analogy of super chains. Like you have this base chain, and now you're trying to create super chains, different communities across the world.
And you could say that about push, like we were saying. You could say another greater goal would be to start with some push channels and then create some kind of super connection between your first channels and other partners in the ecosystem, some greater app that uses multiple parts of multiple pieces of tech, like 3 partners plus push, however you want to say that. And yeah, I completely agree. Another thing to mention there is it's not just watering the seed, but it's, for example, you need to have more documentation often than you might think. We've learned that too. You start out the grants program thinking like these 3 pieces or whatever are enough for the first 6 months. Just to everyone out there who's listening, who's involved with anything like that, it's not. You should err on the side of more. Something that really helps people stay retained in your ecosystem is having even more documentation than you might think, even like spelling out as much as you can. Here are 5 typical steps of what happens from your first instantiation with our protocol to what ways you can go after, even having some kind of spider web diagram, because you can't always say one way, of course, or even 2 ways. So you could have like 5 or 6 or 7 lines going different ways and say, these are the different paths we see most developers in our ecosystem taking. So when they start, they don't just see the push channel. They don't just see the first integration with a Cartesi rollup. They see the steps ahead already as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and even like even beyond docs, like some people like to read and follow, some people like to watch video tutorials. So like some people
Video
are
is
just
very important. Yeah, you would think, but like it does need to be said again. There's a lot of us, Cartesi and Push, and a lot of people I know doing it well, but there's still a lot of projects not doing enough video. And we're in the attention economy, as we know, and people often don't have enough time to just like read everything. They want to see it on video. They want to hear it on audio. There's also a reason podcasts are so popular, even though they catch a lot of flack sometimes, because people want to be able to walk around, even developers, and just hear about the different paths in an ecosystem, hear about the different apps being built, the different ways the language can be used. So the audio should also not be slept on.
Very true.
There was something like, this is a clip I want to go viral, like for other protocols to listen. Like this is a message for everybody. Okay, man. Stepping into a little bit on these decentralized communities and DAOs, like you are the person who's managing this. What do you think, like initially when this whole DAO term got hyped up like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, it was everybody wanted to be a DAO. Like every other organization you would see, people went crazy about it. And there was this, I'm not sure if you have heard, there was this popular definition of group chats with bank accounts. That's what a DAO is.
Yep.
So how long have we come from there? And today, how would you describe like a push DAO, whatever you are doing here? Like, how would you describe how different it is? And what's your role there?
So I've been experienced with DAOs all the way back towards, I wasn't directly involved with it, but to reading about and hearing about and seeing things about the DAO all the way back in the early days of Ethereum. So we kind of started with, people don't see it this way sometimes, but this is how I see it. Bitcoin started the first DAO because in the way that the monetary system is DAOified and controlled by miners. And then Ethereum is another kind of DAO in the way that the developers work together to grow the ecosystem. And then the DAO happened. And then, as you mentioned a few years ago, for example, DeFi summer was the explosion, the re-explosion is what I call it, of DAOs after a few years of them kind of going behind the scenes for a while. Because when people say they died out after the DAO, that's not really true. Things were still happening, but they were very much behind the scenes for a few years. So DeFi summer happened, then DAOs became very popular for governing these nascent monetary systems on chain, these lending protocols and things like that. I really do like, just to quickly touch on that, for example, how well Aave is doing. Aave is a great example of a DAO that is from DeFi summer and is still thriving. Some are thriving, some are not, but that's definitely one example of a thriving one. After that, around that time, as to my personal experience, my experience ramped up around DeFi summer considerably when I was doing my MBA thesis on DAOs around then. So I was interviewing all kinds of leaders in the space. I interviewed Alona from Ukraine DAO. We became like really good friends. We worked together on Ukraine DAO and social impact DAOs. That was kind of the next touch point for DAOs after DeFi summer and protocol DAOs blowing up. So I did a lot of social impact work. Shout out to everyone there. Then I ended up at Serotonin, where I worked with 50 plus projects who were, in a lot of cases, integrating at least aspects of DAOs. So there were DeFi DAOs there. There was even a zero knowledge proof competition DAO for like researchers running the competition in a DAOified fashion. So I helped a team architect that, which they plan to use in the next few years, to my knowledge. And then I ended up at Push, which the reason I mentioned DeFi summer a few times is because Push DAO is also a protocol DAO. The difference being that some DAOs, as we know, from day one, just like throw it out to the wolves. And there's nothing wrong with that. I like both ways, but they throw it out to the wolves and they say, everyone figure this out, grow the DAO together from day one. Push DAO is progressively decentralizing. So it's like piece by piece on a very intentional plan of the ecosystem becoming decentralized over a multi-year timeline. I was brought in after a few instances stalled of the DAO, which is, by the way, very natural. We've seen many DAOs start in different ways and not work in those ways and then pivot to a new way and thrive. So they brought me in, what I like to say, because there's no one that controls a DAO. That's just not true. Then it's not a DAO if one person controls everything. They brought me in to be the DAO chef, essentially. Like, I find the right team to cook together, and we cook together, and I'm the chef in the sense that I'm behind the sous chefs, throwing them the right ingredients to succeed. So what I did from day one at Push was, of course, I studied how the protocol was working, how the community was doing things, what conversations were being had. I quickly found the 5 or 6 people doing the most in the community. We met and we started ideating on what needed to be done for a new governance framework, what was working, what wasn't working, and most importantly, perhaps besides a new governance framework, there was a plan in this year, which we call year 1, to fully push grants, ecosystem grants, under a DAO for the first time in history. So that successfully has happened, and that's the other main thing we've done this year in terms of progressive decentralization. We've had a few mini programs. We've had a new governance system. We have push improvement proposals, just like Ethereum improvement proposals and Bitcoin improvement proposals. We even have what we call pre-pips, which, if you think of push improvement proposals as just like Ethereum, like anyone can propose a network improvement and all that, pre-pips are, since we're progressively decentralizing, the way the foundation comes to the community, and instead of just doing something, gauges sentiment before they do something. And the idea is we're not going to really do that if the community totally hates it and everyone's against it, of course. So it also gives, even during a progressive road of having piece by piece given to community control, it still gives the community a direct say in the major things the foundation is doing. So I really like the pre-pips framework. We've had cool things come through there, like Farcaster frames with Push, or the wormhole cross-chain request framework that I mentioned earlier, all through pre-pips. And so all of that launched with PushDAO this year. I was, and still am, the chef behind the scenes. But the beautiful thing is now the governance is up and running, and I'm even more behind the scenes. And the control is really with the 4 out of 5 on the council of the DAO. Our governance system is basically delegates, 5 delegates voted in by the community. So there's always an 80% mechanism right now, even this early, for the community to just push through things, aka the other 4 people on the delegate council are not foundation people. So I think that's beautiful too. Even with this progressive decentralization, everything that is under the DAO is truly community controlled.
I love hearing like all this experience, everything that you've went through. So I think it's even a good cue for getting to know a little more with Shaheen's rapid fire. You ready, Shaheen?
Oh yeah, always. I'm always ready for rapid fire.
Okay.
Are you ready? Yeah.
Shaheen's gonna propose you some questions that you have to reply with like 1 word, 1 sentence,
we'll do it.
really fast. Almost no thought there.
Okay, don't mute yourself for the next 5 minutes.
No, we're good.
All right, here's our first question. Give me 1 word to describe Web3 community.
Wild.
Okay, I'll take that. Okay, so we were talking about DAOs. What's the biggest misconception about DAOs that people have?
That it's just something like an on-chain investment firm. It's a lot more than that. There are a lot more use cases. One example would be what we said. PushDAO is an ecosystem run by the community, is a progressively decentralized ecosystem like that.
Agreed. Okay, next. If Push Protocol were to be a movie, what title would you give it?
I would literally say Rebels on Chain.
Makes sense. I can visualize that. Okay, if you had to collaborate with 1 person in Web3, who would that be?
I would collaborate with Alona from Ukraine DAO again. It's not just a social impact DAO work we've done. She's one of the most brilliant minds in the space. She's worked with Vitalik, Rev Miller, all kinds of other cool people, and we're trying to come up with new ideas for the future. I'm going to mention a quick one. I'm going to cheat. I'd also collaborate with Charlie Shremmore, where we've been talking.
Cool. And we have seen like there are a lot of new happenings. It's very hard to stay up to date in Web3 when they're like protocol dropping every next day. How do you keep up with that? What's your go-to resource?
It's difficult, but the easy and true answer is when in doubt, I use my trusted circle of Web3 friends, because I think it's actually not true when you say like one news source is the best. Like you said, it's really hard to do that. There's just too much happening. One news source doesn't cover everything. So having the right friends is invaluable. People from many different ecosystems in your circle, having like a really balanced worldview that you've constructed like that, because you have this balanced group of people.
Right. Okay. If somebody was starting a DAO today, what is that one piece of advice you would give that person?
Nothing's ever going to be perfect. Lean on the group of people around you. Don't try to do everything yourself. I kind of cheated, but that was basically one sentence.
Okay. You did great. That's our rapid fire. I think that
I have one last completely random question.
Bonus.
Not related. If you had, what's your favorite siege weapon between a catapult, a trebuchet, and a cannon?
Ooh, I'm a trebuchet fan. I don't really know why, but like I used to play all kinds of like medieval RPGs and stuff. And I used to play like the old Warcraft as a kid and stuff like that, and Dungeons and Dragons. So I guess that's why.
Let's play some D&D, man.
I'm a Superman. I played Dungeons and Dragons for 30 years. I had a method acting group in Europe.
Hell yeah. Dude, I also think trebuchet, just for the name, gets so many points. Like trebuchet, it sounds beautiful.
And I speak French. Maybe that's part of the reason.
There you go. I still think the most poetic one is the catapult, but trebuchet, just the name. It's
just amazing. Rolls off the tongue. Trebuchet. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, anybody listening who plays D&D, I think there's cool things we can do with that with crypto. So let's talk about on-chain D&D, because that needs to happen.
Dude, I can't agree more.
And I'm a dungeon master, for anyone wondering, because everyone always says, well, yeah, but it's hard to start a group because you can't find a dungeon master because there aren't that many. I am a dungeon master.
Recently, I've been finding out that it's easier to find a dungeon master than dedicated players.
It's getting better. Yeah, it's getting way better. It's getting way better. So I'm a huge fan. I think when we think about Web3 gaming, let's draw inspiration more from popular games like that. Let's think about on-chain StarCraft. Let's think about on-chain D&D. Let's think about all that stuff. Baldur's Gate on-chain. I'm a big fan of Baldur's Gate.
Hell yeah. Gotta happen. I love thinking about use cases.
But this has been wonderful. Thank you for this. And yeah, the rapid fire is great. Nice choice.
Is there any specific use case, after all talking about use cases, like from push, that you think is really nice coming forward?
Yes, I'm going to mention a few, but just to kick things off with one, we already have 5 or 6 AI projects in the pipeline for 2025. Of course, because it's like almost December, we're obviously already trying to onboard projects for the grants program for 2025. One that I'm super bullish on, they're able to release basically embeddable AI agents that learn sort of like similar to a generative adversarial set of networks, like if anyone's familiar with that in AI, to learn from your infrastructure. So there's so many things that can happen there, like AI delegated nodes, a swarm of AI running a swarm of nodes, just learning on how the logic of the infrastructure works. I'm really bullish on these embeddable agents. And one thing to quickly mention there as well, because it's blowing up so much and I'm really excited about AI agents, but we do need to be realistic. There's a lot of instances where people are saying this is an AI agent and it's not. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's usually something in between. It's like, it's cool, but it's something in between. It's like a set of developers or a developer automating the prompting function with a large LLM through some kind of logic. So like it looks like an AI, but they're just like on the back end prompting the LLM in a certain way and then pushing it to Twitter. It's a cool thing, but it's not quite an autonomous AI agent. A lot of the instances are intermediary right now. But to be clear, that's a good thing, and I'm glad we're taking steps forward.
Yeah, and I think even verifiable AI is something that has to come. We do have some examples of Cartesi that it's always nice to explore. And
that's why I mentioned this. I think we should talk more in between the Cartesi and push ecosystems throughout the next few months, because we have several AI projects in the pipeline as well that might interoperate quite well between our ecosystems in interesting ways.
Yeah, agree.
So to mention another use case as well. I'm very, very bullish on things like I suggested earlier in the podcast. So you think about real-time messaging on chain. This may sound crazy, but it's not impossible. Think about one day having universal apps for email on chain, universal apps for like an on-chain Facebook that doesn't steal your data and actually rewards everyone quite equally, or at least more fairly, without a centralized service involved. Think about the future of social media and all of the ways we talk and coordinate online on chain. And I do, like, personally, to be clear, that's just my personal view, see that for push protocol one day turning into push apps like that.
Hard agreement. I think social media is such a huge case, and it has to come true. I really need verifiable recommendation algorithms happening on chain.
Yes, that too. I'm very bullish on verifiable recommendation algorithms for a lot of reasons, but one is really obvious to everyone because of how toxic most of our leading algorithms in Web 2 have become, and they're not recommending the right things at all, and we can all
exactly. Bro, I think this was amazing. I would love to hear so much more, talk so much more, but we're reaching the time limit of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Ian. And if you have any last message you want to say, anything less that we haven't covered here,
just the same. Thank you so much. You guys are wonderful. I'd love to do this again. I'd love to actually invite you live right now to our new podcast, which is launching soon. So we should have you on. I'll talk about whatever theme you'd like within the realm of decentralized community building and dApps.
Let's go.
And that would be wonderful. And then just like, let's continue building together. Anybody interested in push or just building with a DAO or just learning anything like that, or even just proposing a project, all of those things, go to gov.push.org, introduce yourself on the forum. We're extremely open. We want to talk with everyone. I'm very public. I'm doxed, as they say. I'm all over Twitter and Farcaster and everything else. So let's get connected.
Yeah. Nita, if you can put here the link, gov.push.org, for people to see, it would be wonderful.
And for developers, the last thing would be, obviously, if you want to learn more about what Push does on a technical level, our documents are quite extensive, push.org, and just go to the documents link. And then if you have further questions, like I said, same thing, introduce yourself on the forum. We'll get you connected with the right people.
Right. Perfect. Well, I think that's it. Thank you so much for coming, Ian. So that was I Build at 4 a.m. Keep building and pioneering the world of Web3. Let's go. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.